Apple Watch Series 7. Bigger screen, thicker cover glass, new dust resistance rating, Qwerty keyboard, faster charging, new colors for aluminum casing, and new watch faces. That's what's new, on paper at least, for this year's Apple Watch. No drastic new external new design or no new sensors. Is this enough to convince you to get the new watch? Hi, my name is Frank and welcome to the channel. Today we're talking about the Apple Watch Series 7. In today's world where technology is constantly evolving, when we're looking at getting a new gadget, a lot of the times the focus points end up being, is there something new, distinguishably new with a new toy? Or, spoken more directly, will people be able to tell that I got the new toy? To be fair, that's a very valid consumer purchasing motivator. I certainly want to show off a new t-shirt that I just bought or a new haircut that I just got. Why not tech, right? And we've seen a lot of different iterations of shape and color changes that the tech giants has been offering this past few years, and that has been training our eyes to spot the shiny new toy in the market. That's where it gets a bit tricky for this year's Apple Watch. Let me explain. Visually, it was a little bit difficult for me to tell apart the Series 6 and Series 7 just by looking at it. Externally, yes, there are new colors for this year's aluminum casing watches, but the most advertised ones, for example the green, is not as obvious to spot as you might expect. In most lighting scenarios, it looks like a very, very dark gray, only when the lighting hits it just right and you detect the green hue. It is the dark inky green color that has gained quite a bit of popularity over the past few years. A lot of people compare it with the green that was on iPhone 11 Pros. I think it's still not quite the same. The green on the watch do seem a bit darker to me. We do not get the drastic new design, the squared off edges, or was it as easier to spot as, for example, like the ceramic casing? So externally, it didn't look too different. The display, though, it is quite bigger. It is one of the main selling points of this year's Apple Watch, but since the external body remained a similar size, and for previous watches, their border are surrounded by the dark material between the screen and the casing. So, which means unless you're using a watch face that has the screen lit from side to side, border to border, it's very difficult to instantly tell that you have the bigger screen. I have to give it to the Apple engineering team in terms of their design really do look pretty and it lasts a while. And especially with the darker watch faces that I like to use, the new display is not as glaringly obvious. So, the true test of whether or not someone would opt to get a new watch this year truly falls on features. Features that the watch offers. For new users, the watch would have to answer the question of, is this good enough a gadget to add to my day-to-day carry and have it make sense? For existing users, does the set of features offered here truly defines a purchasable upgrade that will convince them to go and spend the money? When I'm looking at the word upgrade, right, there's a few questions that I ask myself. Is there something new that did not exist before? Or does it do something better, or is it easier to use? When we're looking at the Series 7 today, other than the fact that they now added a dust resistance rating, the list of what this watch can do largely stayed the same as the Series 6. So the key differentiator falls on the second question. Does it do things better? Is it easier to use? Let's talk about it. Let's start with the bigger display. There has been actually quite a lot of heat on the interwebs discussing this. In my mind, when I'm looking at a monitor or TV, for example, a 20% increase in screen size would absolutely be considered a big upgrade. But how come it didn't drum up the same amount of excitement for this year's Apple Watch? I think it is. I think Apple did a good job, and things really do look better on the new display, and the bigger display in the similar form factor does make the watch look more futuristic. This is the second time in the history ever of all Apple Watches that there has been a significant design change. As you would expect the product come from Apple, they did not simply just scale everything up and call it a day. They reworked the on-screen elements to make the bigger canvas make sense. For buttons that could use a little bit of a beefy up, they made them bigger. For apps that has a lot of elements on the screen that would benefit more with a precision when hitting the buttons, they expanded the gaps between the buttons, so it increases the accuracy. For apps where the goal is to just show information, you can see more, and you can make the text bigger. The largest font size on Series 7 is a lot bigger than the largest on Series 6. This, for people who have trouble reading smaller fonts, is a big plus. The display itself also is brighter on wrist down mode indoors. Nice to have. And the front face itself, they made it thicker, and that translates to a higher level of durability. Always good for something that you wear on a daily basis. Alright, the Qwerty keyboard. I was doubtful at first, but the swipe to type actually turned out to be quite easy to use. I'm not advocating here to start using this keyboard to respond to all your messages from now on, but I still prefer to be able to use my phone or use voice to text whenever possible. It is still easier to use dictation whenever possible. But in situations where you only have access to this or you cannot speak audibly, I'd say this has proven to be a faster and easier option than writing every single letter of every word on this panel over here. Another good update this year for me actually is the faster charging speed. Yes, you do need to use the Apple USB charger in order to get that speed, but hey, now you can use one charging brick for both your phone and your watch. One less thing to worry about, one less spot to take on your extension cord. If you do get to travel, one less thing to pack as well. I do think this deserves a little bit more credit than just being able to quickly top up the battery before you go to bed. Before, with the amount of battery life and the amount of charging time needed, it would require at least a little bit of a thought to plan in the day when your watch needs to be charged, to be able to use throughout the day, close all your activity rings, and to be able to track your sleep. A lot of people run into the issue of either not having enough time or battery to use during sleep, or risk not having enough battery to last the whole day the next day while maximizing the wear time. The reason that's important, for somebody like me that sits around on the desk all day, I need as much time as possible to be able to close my stand rings. So that's, I know you might be laughing at me, but it is just a little bit too much planning and anxiety that goes into it that I just don't need. Now, with the Series 7, I can actually use the wind down time between dinner and bed to do a bigger charge and use my morning prep time to get ready to top up. So my battery actually always has been staying between 20% to 80% between charges, and I get to use it throughout the day without having to worry about it, which for me is a big deal. So with these said, I think the biggest improvement of this year's Apple Watch actually is the improvement in the ease of use. Making things easier to do on the watch, making it easier to interact with the watch, a few seconds saved here and there, a few unnecessary taps avoided here and there, and a little less worry goes out throughout the day, and that just makes your quality of life better. I know it's not as exciting as a new health sensor, for example, or getting something completely different, but in the realm of technology nowadays, if it's making your life better, I say that's a worthy upgrade. Alright, with all of these said, should you get one? I think by the time you're watching this video, the early adopters have already gotten their watch or have already placed their order. So for the rest of us that's still considering, the question really comes down to, does any of these new or updated features provided something that you've been waiting for or you've been looking for? Like I mentioned before, for some people, simply the fact that they can have larger fonts on the watch this year is a yes or no in terms of whether they can use the watch easily in their day-to-day. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a new processor or a new health sensor for that to be a determining factor. Does these improvements check off a box that it's been something you've been waiting for? If that's a yes for you, I think you know what to do. For people that have not had an Apple Watch before and considering to get their very first one, I think this is a good year to get it. I always advocate for getting the tech that's updated so that you can use it as long as possible and it's future proof. And this applies for the watch as well. A lot of people ask me, what do I use an Apple Watch for? For me, in addition to being able to relay the notifications on the watch, a big plus for me is the health benefit. It not only made me more aware of my own health and pushed me more to do more, actually. I'm a very visual person, so having those 3 activity rings right here on my wrist have added a gentle motivation on my day to day to stand up every hour, to work out a little bit longer, to generally take better care of my health, be more mindful of it. Also, the fact that I can share my activity progress with my friends added that gamification aspect of it. Me being very competitive, I want to be sure to be the one uh, closing the rings. I wanted to win. So that also added a level of push for me to be more active. When it comes down to which casing you get, for most people I recommend the aluminum casing. It is lightweight and is cost effective, and they don't differentiate much feature-wise with the rest of the lineup. You do get to choose whether or not you want cellular with the aluminum casing. That is up to you, whether or not you need it. For the stainless steel casing itself, I really do love how the finish look. So if you're using these not only for the features but also as a fashion statement, the stainless steel does fall closer to the traditional look of the watches. If you don't worry about money at all, there is also more expensive options for you to choose from. Thank you for hanging out with me. I had a great time. I hope my perspective has been helpful. So, are you going to get a Series 7 this year? If you already got one, which one did you get? Let me know your thought, and please feel free to share if you have any additional comments or questions about the Apple Watches. Thank you again for your time. I'll see you in the next video.